Ladies and gentlemen, we have him. Hello!
Sorry, I've been on from the beginning listening to your stand-up. I just couldn't figure out how to connect. Sorry, I'm clearly not as technologically savvy as I thought I was. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear, and I'm feeling very embarrassed now. Now I feel like actually defenestrating myself and jumping out.
No, I clicked onto Ayman Official, but I forgot to do something. I think I'm supposed to follow you and then click on something else to join the conversation. So I've been watching you and typing messages saying, I'm here. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here I am. How are you guys?
So we're very, very good. But sir, you said that you didn't follow Ayman Official before this. Now this I'm taking as an offense. You should follow Ayman Official, no, sir.
So it's my fault. No, I'm totally taking the blame. You're off the hook. No one can defenestrate you, boss.
No, sir, but let me start with a slightly more formal introduction.
Oh, if you insist, sure.
So I prepared for this, sir. Since the last 1.5 weeks, I've been preparing for this.
All right, go ahead. I listen attentively.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the person who is in front of me is a sagacious scholar.
Oh my!
He is who makes me question, who's made me question myself as to why am I a Hindu. This man is a perspicacious Pandit, a person who has written many great Indian novels, and also an individual who could traverse any colloquy with consummate adroitness, and at the end of it, leave an audience pleasantly discombobulated. If you did not understand, if you did not understand the oxymoron at the end, which I utilized, then I must tell all of you that you're pretty much like me. You are what follows the word oxy. Therefore, you should go and get yourself a dictionary. Otherwise, this is going to be a difficult show to understand and comprehend. On that note, before he defenestrates me right out of this window, let me introduce friend, guide, mentor, and honorary chairperson of the Board of Advisors of IIMUN. I don't know how he's tolerated me for this long. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, presenting on Kuch To Corona, Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
Hi. Okay. Right. Let's get on. How are you bearing up under all of this? You look as if you're outdoors. Are you in a window which has a view of the sea?
Sir, actually, that's a painting that I painted. It
nice.
Also it changes as we go from 7:05 to 7:30. You will see it the color changing.
Very impressed.
But sir, the first question that I must ask you on behalf of everyone. There is this part-time president, full-time comedian. And so we're not referring to me here. We're referring to this person who says on every policy he goes and he starts his speech as, this is a huge mistake. He starts his speech always like that. And he says, this is a Chinese virus. We have imported this virus from China. So China and WHO, do you think a lot of people are blaming them? There is no unity in diversity, and there are only contradictions and theories when it comes to things like this. If you, sir, carefully observe, I'm utilizing all your books one after the other. So 10% of royalty should go to me, sir.
10% is all
So what do you think of China and the WHO, their role in the pandemic? Could they have done more? And is this a Chinese virus?
Well, look, I mean, the fact is that it seems to have originated in China. But I think using Chinese virus as a term of abuse doesn't actually cure us of the virus and doesn't make anybody better. I tend to dislike anything that implies a certain amount of racism. And, we are seeing a lot of racism right now in many Western countries against people who are Chinese or look Chinese. Many of you have probably seen videos on WhatsApp of people being thrown out of supermarkets and other unpleasant incidents. And I must say, it's brought out some of the worst things in human beings. We've even had incidents in India where our own brothers and sisters from the Northeast have been treated badly and called corona and called, virus carriers and so on because they look Northeastern as opposed to South Asian, from the point of view of the standard image. Now, these kinds of things are always reprehensible. I'm not a fan of racism in any sort. Calling it a Chinese virus is just a term of abuse. And though I believe that China has a lot to answer for, and that they definitely did not cover themselves with glory about the way they handled it during at least the first 6 weeks. Many of you may know that it was just a few days ago that they quietly doubled the death toll in Wuhan because they had lied about the actual figures still a few days ago. Now, that kind of China, unfortunately, I have to say, doesn't deserve much sympathy. But the Chinese people should not become the object of racism.
So the Chinese people should not be ostracized, and any form of discrimination is not correct.
That's absolutely right. And I feel that about any group, any ethnic group. I don't think that if the actions of specific individuals, governments, decision makers should be used to punish an entire people. I mean, that is simply wrong. It's morally wrong, and also doesn't actually achieve anything other than give prejudicial bigots an opportunity to enact their prejudices.
So, but then what would you tell my mother? She discriminates me on a daily basis, discriminates against me on a daily basis. Whenever it comes to eating she says only 1 dozen for you in 1 week, not more, not anymore.
Listen, I'm sitting in Delhi where you...
But my father gets 2 or 3 dozens every week, and both of them are watching this.
Well, first of all, I think then your parents are Aam Aadmis after my heart, because I would be very happy to get some of your share as well and reduce you from that. But I think on the other hand, her devotion to her husband is what you should admire, because obviously one day you might be entitled to that from another lady than your mother, and then you can enjoy the alms from her. Having said that, the truth is that many of us here in Delhi can't get your wonderful Alfonso mangoes because they're not reaching Delhi. And so you don't expect too much sympathy from me, Rishabh.
But that all your answers are always politically correct. And as I can see after my reading of Pax Indica, I feel there are very few people, and even before that, I feel that there are very few people who represent India as finely as you do. So I must ask you this question, that in the light of increasing right-wing populism across the world, right from South America to the erstwhile inglorious empire, everywhere where we're seeing an increase of right-wing populism, post-pandemic, you think it's going to decrease or it's going to increase, and the word globalization will have a new meaning post-pandemic?
Well, it was already spreading around the world. We've already seen so many examples of what we call ethno-nationalism. That is, people talking about the nationalism of their own ethnicity, and people winning elections by being, as they present themselves, more authentic representatives of their people. So you have, for example, Mr. Trump with his Make America Great Again. You've got the Boris Johnson campaign for Brexit, which is actually, as you know, a xenophobic thing in many ways, trying to get Britain out of Europe because people were tired of hearing East European languages in the street, that sort of thing. You're seeing Viktor Orban in Hungary, Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, Erdogan in Turkey, and one might even say Modi in India, who have been saying essentially that they are true, authentic nationalists who speak to the ethos of their people. There's a very interesting theory that many of your listeners might find worth reading about by a British writer called David Goodhart, who said that there is a division in the world between the somewheres and the anywheres. The anywheres are people who are comfortable, like you, Rishabh, in any place in the world. They go from business class lounge to business class lounge without the slightest discomfort. They are
talking about the wrong
five-star hotels in every capital in the world, in the boardrooms of Goldman Sachs, all of that. And these people are the ones who are the anywheres. But the somewheres, he says, are the people who say essentially they are from one particular place. They are anchored in that place. Their roots are in that place, in people of the same religion, the same ethnicity, the same language, sometimes the same prejudices. And the somewheres, he argues, are basically winning against the anywheres today. When people, I keep saying like you just to tweet you, but you are IIMUN's founder. When people like you said, we are a citizen of the world, what did the former British Prime Minister Theresa May reply? She said, people who say they're a citizen of the world have no idea, they don't have the slightest idea what citizenship is really all about. So the answer of the nationalists was, citizenship is about one country, one place, one ethnicity, one religion, one language. And that's what is ethno-nationalism. And the ethno-nationalist idea was indeed prevailing. It was actually making a lot of headway even before the coronavirus. Now, once COVID pandemic has struck, one of the tendencies we are seeing on the part of people is actually a tendency to retreat behind more national barriers. It's a tendency to say, we need to protect ourselves. Many of you may have seen Narendra Modi's speech to the Panchayat Sarpanchs yesterday, where he said essentially self-reliance, self-reliance, self-reliance. And that is the message that he's saying. We have to now throw up the barriers. We can't rely on the outside world. We have to do everything for ourselves. In my view, that's precisely the wrong message. I think that we had outgrown self-reliance in a constructive way. We had plugged into the advantages of globalization. Much of India's growth and prosperity was because we were plugged into a globalized economy. And we should be fighting against the tendency to retreat behind protectionist barriers, behind the mantra of self-reliance, because otherwise our own economic advantages of being able potentially to be a workhorse for the world will go right down the tubes. So I do fear what you're saying. I think the world will retreat more into itself. Countries will elect more so-called nationalist leaders, but in the process, I believe we would all actually be worse off.
So, but I'm pretty sure that the fourth term from Thiruvananthapuram is guaranteed, because young people definitely want to see you play a larger role in both the Indian National Congress and for the country as well. But
well, that's sweet of you to say. I can tell you that no voter in Kerala wants to be taken for granted, and so I certainly am not taking anything for granted, not even whether I will feel that I can afford to contest some years from now, 4 years from now. But the truth is that I am very blessed to have enjoyed the appreciation and support of the people of Thiruvananthapuram. In fact, next month, I will become the longest serving MP ever of Thiruvananthapuram in history, because we just don't have a tendency to re-elect people very much in Kerala. In fact, for the last 55 years, no state government has been re-elected. We've had an alternation of ruling parties every 5 years. So that's the way the Kerala voter is. They look for performance, they look for connection. And so, you know, my going has been good so far, but I'm not taking anything for granted.
And there's so much to learn from you, but I must clarify to everybody who's watching, especially that one fellow from the IT department who messaged me saying, but Rishabh, we thought you travel in economy and you stay in budget hotels, you are in account with Oyo. Dr. Tharoor is saying all of this on a very light-hearted note. So please, anybody from the IT department. But let me take.
I was trying to match your mood at the beginning of the show.
But let me go, of course. And can you see the portrait changing color?
Yes, I can indeed. It's very interesting. But the problem is it's getting brighter, whereas outside my window is getting darker. How is that happening?
So this is a secret which I can only tell you in person. I cannot disclose on national Instagram live on an international podium such as this.
Okay, well, you're obviously a very special artist if you can do that.
After
Great.
Da Vinci, sir, it's me. After Da Vinci, I've applied. but no art school wants to take me. But let me take you to the next part of what we do. It's called Tum Bhi Karuna.
Okay.
And sir, in this, you have been a voracious reader. You mentioned in one of the interviews that you read 365 books in 1 year.
That was when I was foolish and 12 years old. I've not recommended it to anybody ever since.
So I read 365 lines in 1 year. There are students who are between 13 to 24 who are sitting at home and watching this and will also watch this recorded. Your book recommendations to all those who are sitting at home?
Well, look, I actually tweeted a whole bunch of recommendations to people, and I hope that they will actually go out and look up my tweet. It's now a while back, as it was during the first week of uh, the pandemic and the lockdown. But what I want to say is that there's a lot that we can do to read. My favorite that I always recommend to everybody, because it's such a cornucopia of reading matter, is honestly the Mahabharata. Because the thing about the Mahabharata is that if you actually were to go out and pick it up and focus on it, there's an enormous amount you'll get. All sorts of stories, didactic lessons, philosophies. At the same time, enough to keep you amused and diverted, because it's a pretty long and hectic book. And I would think that that's one obvious recommendation that one can make. I was trying quickly to look at my tweets, but I can't seem to open them in the right place. I would, however, also urge those who are interested in reading a little more about India to pick up a classic, The Discovery of India by Nehru, because it really is one which is a profound vision of what has made our country. It's now written more than 70 years ago, but it'd be fun to have. But then if you want some light stuff, I'm a huge fan of P.G. Wodehouse. When I was young, I've finished reading everything he wrote, some books more than once, which I don't normally do. But his masterpieces are so well crafted, so brilliantly plotted, wittily written. There'll be a great diversion for people. And if you're looking for something a little more recent and humorous, one of my sort of gems is a book called The 100-Year-Old Man Who Jumped Out of a Window and Disappeared, by a Swedish writer called Jonas Jonsson. It's available in English. And it's genuinely, extremely the funniest, most joyous book I've read in years, because I enjoyed passing it around to friends and never got it back from anyone. It's whole of 20th century history, retold through an ingenious plot in a comic caper, full of the most ridiculous and impossible things happening. And it's told in a very tongue-in-cheek and droll manner. If you want more serious fiction, go to Gabriel Garcia Marquez. 100 Years of Solitude is probably the greatest novel of the 20th century, written in Spanish but brilliantly translated. Go out and get that. There's a lot amongst the classics to enjoy. Sorry.
All of these books would take me 100 years to read. But so how about this book? This is a very this is a book which is written by this one young author. It's called An Open Mic, and there is this wonderful gentleman who's written something about it. His name is Dr. Shashi Tharoor. He had given a. I don't know whether you remember this book.
Rishabh, go on, enlighten me.
It's an open mic. It's written. It's an introvert's journey in an extrovert's world. It's written by this young, very dynamic boy who's in conversation with this legend.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
I'm just joking. Please don't read my book. Please read all the books that he's recommended.
No, but certainly read Rishabh Shah. And while you're reading Rishabh Shah, also make room for one of my 20 books. I assure you they're all worth reading.
And I have one which I was rereading, in fact, The Inglorious Empire.
See, you're an anywhere person. That proves it, because that is a British title. The actual Indian edition is called An Era of Darkness. So if you were a somewhere person, you'd have the Indian edition. But because you're an anywhere person, Videshi edition, very bad boy. I'll tell you right.
I'm a true Indian. I'm a patriot. The Indian national flag is somewhere around here. I can't seem to find it, but I will find it.
I'll lend you mine. Rishabh.
But sir, the last question that I'd like to ask you on the second segment is the government's response to the pandemic. Do you think they could have done things differently? Have they handled the situation as well as you thought they would?
No, I do think it's been disappointing. I mean, it's not an easy job. I have a lot of sympathy for the challenges facing the government, and anybody would have found a tough time doing it. But I think, for example, the lockdown should have happened a lot earlier. And it would have happened if it had not been for the government prioritizing the overthrow of the Madhya Pradesh government first. If they'd had a lockdown nationally, they couldn't have kept the Madhya Pradesh Assembly open to bring down the government. That, I think, was putting politics ahead of people's lives. That was a mistake. Secondly, I think the lockdown, once they had decided to do it, should have been announced with more notice and there should have been more planning. When the Prime Minister gave everybody 2 days for the Janta curfew on a Sunday, which is very good rehearsal time, he could have given people 3 days or 4 days and kept the trains and buses running for a major lockdown to give people time to get back to their homes, their villages, and travel, rather than abruptly shutting down flights and trains and buses, which, as you know, resulted in the horrendous tragedy of the migrant workers. That, I think, was most unfortunate. The fact that we were exporting personal protective equipment and even ventilators right up to the 19th of March shows a real lack of foresight. We should have kept those. Now. Every day one reads about nurses and doctors complaining that they don't have protective equipment and they're risking their lives in treating patients. So that's a real challenge, I think, for all of us. And I do believe that the need to actually take care of various constituencies is enormous in India, because we have Indians stuck abroad, you have Indians stuck in different states. You know, just recently we had some of the students from Kota taking a bus to Himachal Pradesh, a bus to Uttar Pradesh. What do I do about students from Kerala? Will they get permissions to go through, 12 states on the way down to Kerala if they want to leave Kota, and they do? So you've got some real issues like that. Having said that, I want to pay tribute to those ministers I've been dealing with for being as helpful as possible in these very tough circumstances. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has been terrific. Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri has been terrific. Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan. These are all people who have been responsive, whom you can reach out to. But there are still challenges. And I do want to say that while the government, I'm sure, is working hard, it doesn't mean that everything they've done is right. Right now, while the crisis is going on, I don't want to be negative, but I do think there are things that we can actually do better. As an MP from Kerala, I will say there's a great deal we can learn. The rest of the country can learn from Kerala and see how exactly we can, in a constructive and sympathetic way, lock people down, quarantine them, at the same time give them the supplies they need, make sure that they're looked after, trace their contacts, do things in a sympathetic way, and essentially eliminate the virus. They've done a very thorough job. And I think I've written about this, of course, you can Google my article, but I think this is something which I would urge people to bear in mind, that there are always ways of doing things better. Now, clearly, the whole lives and livelihoods debate is getting more and more intense. People are saying, what's the point of saving our lives? We're going to starve to death. And that's a fair question. Many people should be allowed to get back to economic activity. I don't think there's any substitute for a phased, calibrated lifting of the lockdown, with specific groups, specific areas, specific places being exempted first. And doing all of this is going to be important, that we do it in a bipartisan spirit, supporting the government, trying to make it work. And that's the spirit in which I've answered your question, Rishabh.
No, absolutely. And I think there are very few, and that's the reason why I chase you all the time in order to talk to young people, because I think there are very few people who stand for the real idea of India and the India Shastra that you've written. Quite honestly, it's always a pleasure talking to you. But before I let you go, I have to ask you some light-hearted questions, 3 rapid-fire questions, which you need to answer very honestly.
All right, let's go.
So, the first question, if you had to change something about the BJP, what would that one thing be that you would change about the Bharatiya Janata Party?
That's not a light-hearted question. Very seriously, I would urge them to drop their bigotry and their whole concept of Hindu Rashtra. That's a very serious question, because they may be good people in the BJP, but they're subscribing to a terribly discredited ideology. I'm writing a book about Indian nationalism during the pandemic lockdown, and I think you'll see why I feel that this is really, in many ways, an anti-national ideology that they need to shed.
So so it's basically the anti-national ideology that I'm going to pick up and give to Times of India to print as tomorrow's headlines.
Okay, fine.
One thing that you'd like to change about the Indian National Congress?
Oh, I think that we probably need to enhance our grassroots connect. We have it in Kerala. We don't seem to have it in many parts of the country, where in some districts we have netas and no followers. I think we need to really get out as soon as the lockdown is over, the virus is behind us. we need to get our hands dirty in the field. And that's something that being actively involved in politics in Kerala has taught me.
And so the last question, this is a $1 million question. If you answer it correctly, we transfer.
You're going to give me $1 million?
We transfer 1 million Zimbabwean dollars to your bank account, sir.
Which is what, about 1 rupee now? Okay, go ahead. I look forward to getting that 1 rupee from you.
So the last question is, which is your favorite platform to interact with young people globally? And you have two choices. Option 1.
Ayman.
So sweet. That is the right answer. We are transmitting the money as we speak. As we speak, currently the money is being transmitted to Dr. Tharoor's account, and everyone in the IT department, please note it was 1 million Zimbabwean dollars. But on that
That
note,
you have to do. I'm just delighted to have had this time with all of you. I'm really sorry about the first 5 minutes when I was talking, but no one could see or hear me. But now that we're all connected, I hope the young people listening in will support the objectives and the efforts that you have been really doing a great job with Rishabh on Ayman. I hope that we can actually promote more understanding, more international understanding, and more understanding that we can get past all the social distancing. I mean, it's an impossible situation for a politician. We're just so used to pressing the flesh. You can't win too many votes from 3 meters away. So I think we need that. And I feel that the young people will celebrate the air they've been breathing for the last few weeks. But one of the great ironies we all have to get over is that it's just when the air is breathable that we have to go outside wearing masks. So it's such a big pity that that's the way things are right now. But one day we'll have again the good old days when you didn't have to sing Happy Birthday twice while washing your hands. So that might be the look forward to.
No, on that note, I have to ask you a personal question, and then we'll conclude this. I've always wanted to join politics, always. So, but you're not taking me in the Indian National Congress. From when I've been messaging you, sir.
That is a lie worthy of the BJP. You've never sent me one message to join the Indian National Congress. So if you believe in all these, what is it? Terminological inexactitude is what Churchill called it. Instead of saying lie, he said you're guilty of terminological inexactitude. So if you do that, then the BJP is the place for you.
No,
but if you want to stand up for truth, truth, coexistence, and the Indian way, then we'll be happy to have you in the Indian National Congress.
No, and to all the people who have been watching this, and there were at one point in time almost 6,000 people who were watching this live. So
no, there was 9,892 at one point. I've been following while I've been talking to you.
Oh, how lovely! So for
they've all gone now.
That's probably because I've been talking. But on that note, if there is one person who represents the idea of India in the way that I would want young people to understand the idea of India, it is this one gentleman whom we are talking to. He's quite honestly very fun, somebody who is very relatable, and I think an intellectual that is respected across borders. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it was a pleasure to be able to, on behalf of all of these people, it was a pleasure to be able to host you, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, on Ayman Officials, Kuch To Karo Na.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rishabh. Stay home, stay safe, but stay apart from others. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Bye, sir.
Bye.